All right, we are on air. Happy Thursday, April 14th, everybody. We're going to do a quick check-in on outstanding design tasks for Backdrop CMS. Starting with Backdrop's website, we have a blog news section. I don't know, I think we're still calling it news, but we've changed the heading to say it was a blog. So, meh, whatever that section is, it's going to need a design review. It's up, it's working. It just might not be kind of in line with the aesthetic of the rest of the site. That's something we had slated for Darius, but anybody who understands design is welcome to take a stab at that too and offer some pointers in terms of things we might change to make that section of the site more consistent with the rest. That issue is number 110 in the backdropcms.org issue queue. Same thing is true of the events listing. We have made it so that anybody who's hosting or an attending event where they want to hear more about Backdrop can post it on the website. It's just using the default styles. There's nothing fancy on the event page or in the sidebar. So we should just make sure that that works the way it is, or if not, if we need to add some embellishment, we could do that as well. And that is issue 188 in the backdropcms.org queue. More exciting, new things we're working on. We're trying to get a showcase section so that anyone who's built a site in Backdrop can post it in the Backdrop showcase on the website. And that'll give people who are looking into Backdrop as a possible solution for them some examples of sites that have been completed and kind of success stories for that. It'll also give developers a chance to kind of show off some of the stuff that they've been doing. So we want to make sure that we can get proper attribution associated with each of those posts. We have a spreadsheet of content buckets, which I think is probably close enough to final that we could start building that page that just has a list of the kind of things that we want to include. We have things like the companies that were responsible, maybe even things like hosting providers. I don't know if that's super relevant, but screenshots, perhaps more than one, some way to show off mobile ones. There's some tricky kind of technical implementation details we need to figure out in that. But this is not a new problem. We can look at existing showcase sites to see how they've solved it and steal some good ideas. So I think we're kind of in a place where development can maybe begin. Like we could start setting up some content types and get all the content buckets that we have in our spreadsheet set up as fields or similar. And then I think design is also ready to begin too. And again, that was on Darius's list, but I'm not sure he's going to have time to do it. So if we have anyone who wants to work on coming up with a brilliant design for the showcase section of our site, we definitely could use some help in that area. So definitely tasks there for the taking. And then that is issue number 176 in the backdropcms.org queue. So if anyone has any feedback on what content or wants to give a design a shot, that's a good place. Just put a comment in the issue saying, I want to take a stab at it, and let us know like what your time frame is, and then we can follow up when you're ready and see how it's going. Also, we're happy to help with anything as needed through the process. And then another thing that I think we'll be able to get up maybe without being blocked on design is a service provider listing. This is something that has worked really well for Drupal.org, just allowing people to mention that they provide services around Drupal. So we want to do the same thing for Backdrop. We're going to have a service provider listing where people who do development can list themselves as developers, designers can list themselves as designers, hosting companies can list themselves as companies that host Backdrop, just that we can kind of start to show the world a little bit of the community that's built around Backdrop, as well as helping people who are looking at Backdrop find people who work on Backdrop to kind of pair everyone together. So we've looked at the way that works on Drupal.org and pulled off some of the fields that are a good idea, and I think we can set up that content type in Vue kind of right away without needing a design process, and then turn it over for design review later. And I think that as people start to add themselves to this service provider listing, we can also then get the references done between things like sites in the showcase linked to service providers that have worked on those sites, and some of those references that I think are going to be useful for people in the future to find, oh, who did this website? I want to hire them. Click, and then have contact information for that company. So we can integrate all of that in the future once we get references into Backdrop. So beyond those kind of new things, we have a bunch of old things that need to be revisited. The find themes and find layouts pages on backdropcms.org need a little love. The find themes page we actually have a design for, and we could get somebody with front-end skills to start working on that if they wanted to. Again, we need a couple of things on the developer side too, like trying to figure out how to pull in images if we want to pull images over from GitHub, or if we want to try and link to them directly on GitHub. We don't know. There's kind of a little technical challenge on how we want to handle that. And then, you know, if there's anything that's missing from the designs that we can't actually build yet, there will be some development tasks there and making sure that we have all of the information we need. The layout project is a little bit more difficult, trying to build out that find layouts page because we don't have any designs yet, and that was something that we left originally because we weren't really sure what people were going to do with layouts, if they were going to build an individual layout or a set of layouts, and how are we going to visually represent to the users what these layouts look like. If they're, you know, 30 of them, do you put 30 images up, or do you just put one, or do you use a logo? And I think that question probably still hasn't been answered, but we might be able to do something based on some combination of the modules listing initially that doesn't have any images, or we could do something like the themes that has one, and just try and figure out some way to better represent those initially, and then when we figure out our like multiple images solution that we want to get in for themes anyway, or maybe even modules as well, we can kind of do that across the board. So we just need someone to kind of take what we have and adapt it for what we need, which is sometimes harder than creating something from scratch. But we do need some help with that find layouts page now that people are starting to do more with Backdrop. Giving them better tools to get those things done is going to be really valuable. So that's backdropcms.org. Also, I would like to send a newsletter on April 20th, so that's about a week from now, that highlights all of the things that people can do on backdropcms.org, and I would like to have, at the very least, the service provider listing done before that goes out, so we can say, list yourself as a service provider, and then we can get all of the people who originally mentioned that they were supporters of Backdrop to create a service provider listing with contact information and hopefully start getting them some business coming from Backdrop, which I think would be great. I don't think the showcase is going to be done, but we can point that out as coming soon and mention that if you have sites that are built with Backdrop, you can add them maybe next time around. The next time we send a newsletter and that's available, we can tell people that it's ready. But I think it would be great to just get people creating accounts and posting testimonials or events or service provider listings, all of that stuff that we have already that people don't know about. We can do a little kind of blast around next time. So if anyone has any time between now and next week and wants to do a design review on any of that stuff, that would be great too. I think the timing would be great if we're going to get a whole bunch of eyes on the site. So I think it's fine, but you know, making it prettier is always good. All right, so there's also, speaking of marketing Backdrop, there's also a tag in the backdropcms.org queue for marketing. I know that maybe the issue queue is not a place that people who do a lot of marketing usually look for tasks, but that was the tool we had, so it's the one we started to use. So if you're particularly interested in marketing, you can definitely check there. There are some issues that are related to marketing and design. For example, we're looking for some stickers that would look good on a Mac for something having to do with the dragon and the apple, so that if you put the dragon sticker over the apple, it'll light up in a way that's really cute. So if anyone has any inspiration on dragons and apples, that's probably a fun issue to work on. It's number 189 in the queue. And we also have this longstanding issue of needing some more consistent branding assets for Facebook, Twitter, Google+, like a background image that kind of conveys the philosophy of Backdrop somehow. We're open to feedback on that one. And that's issue 121 as well. So if you want to fiddle around and make us some images, we'll be happy to look at them and maybe use them for real, because we have kind of nothing right now. So anything is better than nothing. All right, let's talk about the exciting stuff. Backdrop 1.4 is the next minor version of Backdrop that's up for release. It's currently scheduled for May 15th, which is a month from tomorrow, so that's pretty soon. We've got a lot of major things on the horizon for 1.4, so I'm not sure all of them will get in, but we're going to see how far we get. relating to design, there are still a handful of user experience issues that didn't get in after the 1.3 release, which is our user experience release, that we would love to have resolved by 1.4. And you can just search the issue queue for issues that are in the milestone or issues that have like UX in the tag or in the title, and then you can find those. But more major issues are we want to put in a new front-end theme, and I know, Wes, you've been doing a ton of work on that lately. Do you want to give us an update on where the theme is at?
I haven't been able to do anything huge yet.
Okay.
There is something else that I think I'm going to do related to the theme, and then I think I want to work it into core. So, as I mentioned, I had a full day accessibility training lately, which was awesome. And one thing I found out was for users who have likely low vision or something that increase the default font size in their browser, in order for that to actually take any effect, we can't have any font size in pixels, or at least all fonts we'd want to be affected by that, which I think should be all. And then the other problem is if they do turn up their font size and our media queries are in pixels, then a sidebar could still show up at a point where the font size is maybe 150 times larger, meaning that there'd be the line length would get a lot smaller because the words are larger, but the width of the thing is still the same. But if your all your breakpoints are in EMs, then zooming in the document 150% and cranking up the font size 150% would essentially be the same thing from a breakpoint perspective. And so I want to get on that train, but I think the potential headache with using EMs is if you get unintended inheritance and then you get like really tiny fonts or really big fonts or something. So I think we can.
Have you looked at using REMs?
Yeah, you can use REMs. I don't remember where they fall off, but yeah, if you're most comfortable, or if you're not particularly comfortable with EM inheritance, REMs everywhere would effectively do the same thing. I like using Ms everywhere for basically. I don't know how much I want to get into this. I'm writing a Lullabot article about this right now, actually. Basically, if you have a component, like let's say the menu, and the menu wrapper sets a font size in rem, so it kind of resets any potential inheritance. Everything outside of it won't affect everything inside of it. And then everything inside of it is set with EM. That means if you wanted to scale just the menu, you only have to change one font size in the wrapper, and so you can scale each component individually, and you don't get the weird contamination of like EM inheritance you didn't want.
Huh.
So I'd have to write some sort of like front-end documentation of like this is how we write styles in core, kind of thing, and then bounce it off other people, because if I'm the only person that wants to do it, then maybe we shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Wes, I've got a question about that. I mean, I've heard people harping on Ms and Rems for years. Actually, it's funny, the last time I went to an event apart, which you were talking about before the meeting started, which was 7 years ago. They were talking about the same things. But the browsers have changed since then, and now by default, all browsers, when you zoom, they don't zoom text only anymore. They all when you zoom in a browser, like in Firefox, Chrome, or Edge, all of them, it doesn't actually zoom the text. What it does is it tells the browser that its viewport is less. And so if you zoom in enough, you eventually get the mobile, like media style sheets and everything. Even though you might have a browser like 1,200 pixels wide, the web page treats it as though it's like 320 pixels wide, because you've told it that the CSS that my browser is only 320 pixels wide, and then the browser just inflates everything to fill the available space.
Sure.
And so that works with everything, because everything thinks that it's all just 320 pixels wide, so it makes the font freaking huge, as well as everything else.
But users who actually change the default font size is what I'm talking about. So yeah, they did fix zoom, thank God. Changing the default font size, so if the font size is ramped up 150%, and the media query is in breakpoint is in a pixels, it'll still have the same breakpoints, but the text will be significantly bigger, so your line length might be like 3 words per line, which will look terrible. So having all your breakpoints and EMs gets around that. And then whether or not, we do like all REM or EM, I'm not all EM, but a mixture of REM and EM is whatever. But I think the other cool thing about doing it the way I'm thinking is if, let's say I make a sub-theme, and it's off of Basis or whatever the theme that we have. If Basis defines everything, like I said, where the component is kind of encapsulated and sets a rem, so let's say, a hero, it might say that the font size is 1.5 rem because everything's going to be kind of big in it. If I wanted to shrink that down or make it bigger, but that's the only thing I want to do, I liked everything else, I only have to change one thing and everything scales. So it makes it a lot more elegant potentially, but like that's if you're a huge nerd like me, or we can document it really well. So like I really like this idea, but I'm not saying like this is the only way to go. I think it is kind of idealistic, but I think we can make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I think my main concern is that, like, I really like the idea of working in M's or REMs, but it's really hard for people to follow, like, what size that font actually is in this particular location when you do that. And so when I'm doing themes using Sass or whatever, I write a mix-in that lets me specify the font in pixels that then prints it out in REMs or M's, because I think in pixels, and I think a lot of people do. And so there is like that huge like kind of learning gap thing where it's like if you want people who are beginners to kind of be able to jump in and understand what's going on, having it in pixels is super helpful. But I don't think that the breakpoints need to be in pixels, especially if it affects accessibility. I think we could do the breakpoints in M's, but we should just put comments in the code that explain what that is. So that way people can say, oh, at a normal font size, this is whatever pixels, and we could solve that problem. But if we wanted to do that, if we want to do like M's everywhere and we have that, we would just have to do that same kind of documentation where it's like, in this menu block, we're adjusting the font size down 25%. So something that was 16 pixels is now whatever. And then I don't know. We would need to do that kind of, I think, not only in some kind of documentation page, but also in the code itself.
Yeah,
so everywhere we set it, people would know what it was.
Yep. So yeah, I don't know. It might be too crazy to try and do right now, like in Basis, the first version, or like whatever. You're right. The breakpoints we could just do. That would be super easy. Okay. Yeah.
But I definitely would recommend like creating an issue to talk about it, because we don't really know what our like average users are up to these days either. And I think like if we could get more of a conversation around who is using our site, or do you use REMs or M's or whatever, we can kind of figure it out for Backdrop 2, and that might be a good time to switch if that is what we want to do.
Yeah, I did hijack this issue that I made about people wanting the font size to be smaller, and I said, well, we could go the other way, and people might want to be larger because they have low vision. And the other thing about zoom that I realized, at least in Chrome, I don't know if it's the same in other browsers, and maybe you can set a default zoom, but my zoom setting is site-specific, so like, I'm not sure if that'd be annoying for, I don't know, maybe there's just a way to set default, like I want all sites this zoom, because that would, with the browser implementation, that would be the most elegant. But the guy that did the training said that a lot of people, he does a lot of user testing with low vision and different kind of issues, and he said that a lot of them use like either a browser extension or the default setting to actually increase the font size and not zoom. And I was like, oh no.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, it's a little surprising to me because the trend these days is leaning so heavily towards larger fonts. Yeah. That I mean, I guess that's one reason why you wouldn't want to use default zoom everywhere. Because if you had 150% default zoom on a site that already had 18-point font, you'd end up with these massive letters on a lot of sites. So just setting zoom across the board isn't quite right, It's really kind of more the older sites that are like the tiny font size, and the newer ones are just generally a lot better. And actually, with our admin theme, with the revised 7, I mean, some people have been complaining that the font's too large, although I think that with the way trends are going, we made the right call there just by making it basically big enough for everybody.
Right. Well, and it also
make it big. Well, that's
also solves the problem of the size of a finger, being able to click on links.
Yeah, exactly. Which is again why larger is in vogue.
Yep.
And so to solve the immediate problems, like if we just make all of our fonts just about everywhere, the whatever it would be usability acceptable for, I mean, I guess maybe that really varies because it depends on how bad your vision is or whatever. But I mean, you can make it encompass even a larger percentage of people if the font is just big enough in the first place.
Yeah, I actually saw a guy recently who was low vision. He had his phone like literally right up to his eye, and he was winking, and then he'd go like this because he could only see. The guy at the accessibility training said, imagine just seeing, through a straw, and the straw might be smaller or larger depending on how bad the vision is, and that blew my mind. Like I had no idea that was it, and like he said, that's the most common accessibility issue with websites. Is it's not blind people, it's low vision people. That is way more common, which I didn't really think about before. But anyway,
interesting stuff. Okay, well, I would say go ahead and proceed with the breakpoints thing, because that sounds like kind of a no-brainer. And yeah, thank you for going to the accessibility training.
It was awesome. Derek Featherstone, I think. Simply Accessible. It's awesome. He also had, I don't know, I think it'd be cool to do this, but and this is related to our our backdrop.org site. If you the very first link is what's on this page, and it's just an unordered list of the headings, basically, like a table of contents. And I just think it's good as like a person that can whatever. I don't have any real issues using websites. But like, it's also good for accessibility reasons. I thought that was really nifty. I don't know. Maybe it's not appropriate for. Maybe like on our API.backdrop CMS, that could be really cool. I don't know. I really like that.
It's just like a jump menu for every page. That's like, don't bother scrolling. Here's what you need. Yeah, that's kind of clever.
And then
it's a replacement for the jump to main content, which we already have, right? Only it's further than that because it lets you jump to any part of the content.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought that was really slick. Anyway, and because it's the first thing in the DOM, it's the first thing that screen readers will see, which is cool. Mm-hmm. And probably has SEO++ love on it.
Yeah, although I think if I were to take a guess, this might be JavaScript.
Which apparently screen readers generally have access to, which is interesting.
Oh yeah, they definitely do.
Weird.
But from an SEO perspective, I guess SEO, like scrapers these days, too, possibly.
Oh yeah, if you don't have JavaScript, it's just the main content link. Mm-hmm. Interesting. I love it. It's so cool.
It's an enhancement. It's a progressive enhancement on top of the main content link. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That sounds like a good contrib module.
Yeah, we could totally do that.
Hell yeah.
All right.
I bet there's already a JavaScript library. It's probably just adding it to the page.
I bet you he'd be willing to donate his implementation. He was, I don't know, maybe not, but he was super cool.
That is cool. Oh, for people that are watching the video, because there's no chat, we're talking about simplyaccessible.com, and you can see the example there.
If you Google Derek Featherstone, he's the first result. Or this is the first result.
All right, so lots of good ideas for the new theme. I love them all. Good job. The next item on our agenda is to talk about the new layouts. We have not made a lot of progress on new layouts, and with 1.4 a month away, that might not happen. We have a bunch of thinking to do about how to integrate the layout CSS and the theme CSS in terms of libraries, in terms of placement, in terms of all of that stuff. We also have to figure out how to handle upgrade paths from the current layouts that are in core to potential new ones. And we need to try and find a way to do all that without breaking anyone's site. So markup changes, that sort of thing. We'll try, and get that done. We do still have a month, and this community does have a way of getting a whole bunch of stuff done close to launch time. So it's good we have launches 3 times a year. But we'll see. We'll leave that on the list because I think it's going to be a killer feature for Backdrop to have a ton of layouts that are ready to use out of the box. But if we have to push something to 1.4, that's probably the likely feature that won't make it, just because it's had the least progress so far. So we'll see. Keep an eye on it. Not giving up yet.
Oh, real quick,
go ahead.
I had a thought. What if... Oh, okay. 2 things. One, if we put rems everywhere for font sizes to enable people who change the default font size, we'd have to have a PX fallback anyway for IE8, and that would self-document what that size is intended to be, which could be cool.
Yep.
Second thing, at this point, I'm getting a little scared of launching the theme as the new default. I was wondering, what if we get it to a point where it's an alternative theme in core for this version, and then we bang out all the issues, and then the next version we can maybe make it the default.
I like that idea. I think that's smart too, because it'll give us a chance for people to test drive it for a while before we just kind of throw it on everyone and be like, you get this thing that has a bug in it. Yeah, really good idea.
Okay, cool.
I like that as well.
Then I think we'll also get a whole bunch more feedback on it that way too, because right now it's only the people who are working on core, like head, that can see it. But as soon as we put it in, then anyone who has it will be like, oh, I want to play with this, and we'll get a whole bunch more. So that's excellent idea. Love it. Was that 2 things? Yes, because of the fallback. Okay, just making sure I didn't miss something. All right, so if anyone who wants to know what else we're working on 1.4, there is a milestone in the GitHub issue queue. You can look for all issues tagged with 1.4. And there's also a tag on the issue queue for all issues related to design. So if you have design chops and you want to help us out in various other ways for Backdrop Core, check out the tag for audience design and see what you can help us with. Larger picture, we are still interested in creating a human interface guidelines document that will help us know which elements to use in which places. So for example, when you should use a drop button, when you should use a link, when you should use a vertical tab, when you should use a field set, stuff like that, just so that our user interface can get a little bit more consistent. Having these things documented will help us recognize places in core where we're not doing it correctly and clean them up. And it'll also give a really good guide for people who are building contributed modules to follow, so that the interfaces will remain consistent no matter which modules you have on your site, which is, I think, something that will be really important long-term going forward as we start to get a larger and larger module library. If we have somebody who loves documenting those kinds of things, we need a volunteer for that. We have a couple of ideas about making it a requirement to get the documentation done every time some new element goes into core, but I think we need a better starting point than what we have now before we can start adding stuff to that. We need someone to kind of think through that and at least make us an outline. So that would be a great task for somebody new to jump in and do. It just involves looking at how things are going and writing it down. So not a lot of work, not very, well, it's kind of complicated, but it's a good place to start. Okay, so that's all we have for today's agenda. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about today?
I don't think so. I think, yeah, I think our design focus for the next release is definitely on the new theme. If we can make that happen, then that would be huge. Yeah, we've got the general developer meeting coming up in 20 minutes, and yeah, I mean, the things that we're targeting a lot of stuff for this release, and it's only a month away. And if we can get in the things that we have, like, most of the way there, then it will be an awesome release, you know. But it's a lot of stuff. So I'd love to see us focus on the things that we've started and get those done.
What was I going to say? Oh, project browser. Looked like it. Design help was wanted still. Would that be a good thing to work out?
Oh yeah. So yes, but it's not as important. Like right now, what we've done with project browser is like basically project browser kind of doesn't really have a UI at this point. Like, I'm sorry, doesn't have a design. We'll say it that way, where it's like your typical like all of the functionality is there, but it's really not. It hasn't been given a tremendous amount of thought.
Right.
But it actually all works really well, and it's way better than copy and paste a URL into a text field. So at this point, like project browser is like so close that I think that what we'll do is we'll probably merge it here, assuming Doc Wilmot finishes it up in like the next week or so. And then we can iterate on it beyond that. So design feedback is definitely appreciated, but at this point we'll polish the functionality, get it in, and then iterate on it.
Got it. That sounds good. Okay, I'll probably wait on that then and work on the theme.
Yep. Again, yeah. Focus on focus on finishing what we started.
Yeah, that'd be good.
The project browser is so close. It's going to be really exciting. Oh, nice. You even updated the issue already. Good job. Issue 1775. Thanks, Wes. Okay, that's all I've got. Nothing else.
All right. We will see you guys in 20 minutes.
All right. Bye.